head of the Irish police says it's disgraceful that inquiries into the school knife attack have been disrupted by riots in Dublin.
34 people have been arrested after trams and buses were set on fire overnight, as 4 people, including 2 children, remain in hospital.
The stabbing is currently not being treated as a terror-related, but police maintain they are open to all lines of inquiry to determine a motive.
Well, let's cross live to Dublin and speak with our reporter, Dougie Beattie. And Dougie, reading about these riots last night, you have to get down pretty far into the reporting to find the motive. Could you perhaps enlighten us as to why these riots erupted?
Well, they will say yesterday it erupted because of what happened here behind us. These stabbings of 3 children and a lady in her 30s. One of those children remain very seriously ill in hospital. But it really goes back, Tom. It has been bubbling under the surface for so long. Dublin is a beautifully modern European city. It's probably the only city really on the island of Ireland. It has a big population and it is very multicultural, there's no doubt about that, like London, Birmingham, etc. And it feels good about itself. But over these last few years in particular, the young male population of Dublin, the indigenous people there that were in those working classes that would have formerly had jobs in industry, in the shipyards or wherever, they do not seem to be able to get employment anymore. They're not into that. There's no real jobs for them in that concept. And what has happened is there has been a massive surge of immigrants from other places, and most of those are young males. Now, take away the Ukrainians from that, because Ukraine is actually a beautiful country. It actually has very similar morals to that of Ireland and Britain, and they would want to go home, and that's exactly what it's made for. But what has happened now is you have all these, I suppose it's their version of the boats coming in to Ireland, and it has displaced these young men, these men that now think that maybe there is no hope for them, maybe they are forgotten, and they have rallied round one another, and like any young man, they want something to cling to, something to belong to, and what has happened here is they have belonged together as if they are protecting something that they formerly saw as their own, and they believe that they have been forgotten by politicians. So last night when they tried to actually come into this scene behind us, the Garda Síochána tried to stop them, and it created a confrontation that then later turned into a riot. And Leo Varadkar spoke this morning, and this is what he had to say.
Yesterday evening, some people decided that the best way to respond to this terrible attack was to take to the streets of Dublin and try to terrify, intimidate, loot and destroy. Their first reaction to a 5-year-old child being stabbed was to burn our city, attack its businesses and assault our Gardaí. These people claim to be defending Irish citizens, yet they put in danger the newest and most vulnerable and most innocent people. Those involved brought shame on Dublin, brought shame on Ireland, and brought shame on their families and themselves.
Well, Drew Harris was the ex-Deputy Chief Constable of the Royal Ulster Constabulary and the PSNI in Belfast. And last night looked like a scene from the 80s in Belfast. I never ever thought I would see this in Dublin. And he had the Garda Síochána, the police force here, very much trained how to deal with this riot. And within about 3 hours, they had this quelled. There was substantial damage done throughout Dublin. There was a Lewis, a tram, burned, 3 buses burned, there was many, 11 police cars I think destroyed, and many shop fronts and windows, especially those of hotels where immigrants were formerly staying, were destroyed in O'Connell Street area in Dublin. But they did quell it very quickly. They made 34 arrests, but quite seriously, the helicopter all overhead, it brought me back to Belfast in the 80s and early 90s.
Dougie, Leo Varadkar will of course be hoping that he can put a lid on this violence that bubbled over last night. Are we expecting a repeat of the scenes we saw?
Well, I don't know if there'll be. It depends if this young girl gets any worse. I would imagine. But what has happened really is that Leo Varadkar is part of a very fragile coalition with Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil. Leo Varadkar being Fine Gael, and then the Taoiseach, Deputy Prime Minister Micheál Martin being Fianna Fáil, and Leo Varadkar being Fine Gael. They have a coalition with the Greens. But somebody has to address what's going on here. And it was a very, very loud expression to them. Listen to us, we have got this bad and this desperate to go forward with our lives. And any politician at this point that is ignoring that, I think will do it at their peril. And I do believe that the politicians here, although they're talking tough this morning, they are quite shaken by what happened here last night.
It is extraordinary that the police have not as yet confirmed or quashed the rumours about the perpetrator of the original attack that then sparked these riots. Of course, rumours online that this was a recent migrant to Ireland, and yet we haven't heard the authorities say yes or no to that. We haven't heard that clear clarification that could well be what those people are after.
Exactly. And this becomes because there have been quite a few attacks, actually a recent murder in Ireland, and those attacks on young women were done by people who had come into the country as immigrants. Many had burnt their passports or whatever, and came in, were given asylum, and then there's crimes committed. And those that are in the country are saying, well, we don't like this. Of course, that doesn't apply to everybody. You can't tar everybody with the one brush. You have to be very fair about this. But they're saying we want stricter rules, we want medicals done, we want very much investigations into who's coming into our country. And, you know, until they turn around and say it is an Irish national and was always an Irish national or not, this is still going to simmer. And really, Tom, what you have to look at is what sort of sentence will happen to those 32 people that are appearing in court this morning. If they feel that they have some sort of injustice done to them, while those that have done others here and let away with less, it will cause friction and problems in those areas such as Ballymun, Finglas and East Wall. They're all working class areas, the best of people to be honest, but they are working class areas, and they are your original dubbers, if you like, Dubliners, you know, I mean, and that's the real character of this city. And they have, to the whole, really became part of this multicultural society, but they are saying too much immigration inside these last 3 years, and enough is enough.
Well, Dougie Beattie, thank you so much for bringing us that.